We have some breaking news as the Toronto Blue Jays have just made a very surprising move, DFA'ing one of their relievers that was absolutely elite last year and really helped carry the bullpen. So to break that down in this episode, as well as discuss how this impacts the Jays going forward, because Ross Atkins came out and had some more things to say about the team's future, so tons to break down today. But before we do, if you're a part of the large percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 13,000 subscribers. Now, this is very surprising. I was just about to record a video on something else, and then this news just dropped literally 2 minutes ago as of the time of recording. And the Jays obviously playing a few hours. A brutal loss yesterday against the New York Yankees in a game that they were up 3-1 at the end of the 5th inning. And then once the starters were out and the bullpen took over, they completely fell apart. And this has been a year of the bullpen falling apart for the Toronto Blue Jays. Aside from Chad Green and Trevor Richards, the rest of the bullpen has been horrible. The bullpen has been the biggest, what we thought at once was going to be a really important key, integral part to this team has ultimately ended up being their kryptonite. And quite frankly, this was surprising that they did this today. And if you're unfamiliar with the news, here it is. José Cuas has been recalled and they DFA'd Tim Mayza. Now, again, it's not surprising that Tim Mayza is DFA'd necessarily, because obviously Tim Mayza is having a horrible season. He's put up over a -1 WAR. But what's surprising is I did not think they were going to do it this soon. I thought they were maybe going to DFA even someone like Genesis Cabrera, Brendan Little, one of those guys before the DFA'd a guy who put up a 1.5 ERA last year in 69 games. So we'll get into all that in a second. But just this encompasses the Blue Jays season so far. What was supposed to be a strength going into the year, which was their pitching and their bullpen specifically with Jordan Romano. You had Jimmy Garcia. You had Chad Green finally about to have his, and he's putting up a healthy year. Romano got hurt. Jimmy Garcia got hurt. Eric Swanson hasn't recovered from the horrible incident that happened in the preseason or in spring training and then just hasn't been the same since. He's struggling in AAA. And now Tim Mayza, all of those four staples have been unable to produce for the Toronto Blue Jays this year because of whether it's injuries with Romano and Jimmy Garcia as of late or just, quite frankly, a lack of production. And you look at Tim Mayza's stats, and it's so look at this. So since 2018, aside from 2019, which was a bit of an interesting thing, but he's been one of the best relievers for the Blue Jays. 2021, 61 games, a 3.4 ERA, very solid. You look at 2022, 3.14 ERA, and you look at the right there, the ERA plus. He was, so 100 is league average. He was 181% better than league average last season for the Toronto Blue Jays. 69 games, a 1.52 ERA, 23% above league average the year before. Obviously, 32% above league average the year before. Now he's 50% worse than league average. He's having one of the worst seasons of his career, the worst season of his career, and he is unserviceable. And he's probably going to get picked up by a team that needs depth lefties. Lefties are pretty hard to come by these days. But the thing with Tim Mayza is his velocity's been down. He's been trying to work on his cutter a little bit. He is a ground ball pitcher, and this season, he hasn't been inducing any ground balls at all. And whether that's because he's trying a new pitch and it's unsuccessful, whether it's because maybe he's just slowing down with age, even though he's not that old, whatever it ends up being, he is not going to be on the Blue Jays anymore unless he clears waivers and they designate him into AAA with the Bisons. I just don't see that happening. What I think is going to happen is that he's going to get picked up elsewhere. But you look at the fall off for Tim Mayza, and it's just beyond what I ever thought was possible for him. It's the fall off from hell, really, for him, because you look at it, 8 ERA, last season, 1.52 ERA, the year before, 3 ERA, and again, really just breaking news and very surprising for everybody. And again, it's not surprising in the sense that Tim Mayza's having a good season and that, he's got DFA because he's having a good season. He's obviously having a terrible season, but to DFA a guy like this who was your best reliever arguably last year, he wasn't the best, but he was one of the best, at least stats-wise, he was the best, and then to really just completely throw that away makes sense because the Jays need to win now and he has an 8 ERA, but they did not even try to give him some more. They gave him plenty of chances to prove himself, but I'm very surprised that they actually pulled the trigger on this. And yesterday, John Schneider spoke out about Tim Mayza and basically said he's trying a new thing with his cutter. We have faith in him, all this stuff. Ultimately, they made the decision to move on because he had a horrible outing yesterday and he really helped cost them the game. And at a time where the front office, Ross Atkins, John Schneider, all their jobs are on the line, everything is really starting to come to a close for this front office, especially as the trade deadline approaches over the next month or so. What's going to end up happening is that things like this are going to happen because the Jays need to win. They need to win now. They need to win as this deadline approaches. They obviously had a very encouraging win against the Yankees a couple days ago, and the bullpen blew it. But looking at José Cuas, he's been in the MLB for a few years now, and this season, similar numbers to Tim Mayza, but you look at last year for the Cubs, a 3.04 ERA, very, very solid. With the Royals, 4.5 ERA, not great, but not completely terrible. And then in 2022, a very solid ERA again and a hefty amount of innings. So last season he put up about a 4 ERA in 65 innings, which is better than what Tim Mayza has been doing this year, even though they both struggled. Obviously, Tim Mayza is a lefty, Cuas is not a lefty, but I think that at this point it makes sense if the team is trying to win, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. They have no time to mess around and be able to deal with this. We saw Eric Swanson, probably the best Jays reliever last year, who helped get them to the playoffs, struggle this year, and then they ultimately not DFA'd Eric Swanson, but they sent him down because he had options, and now he's putting up a 16 ERA in AAA. So brutal year for the Jays, brutal bullpen year, unlucky even to a degree for the Blue Jays, and it's at a point now where the bullpen absolutely needs to turn it around, because aside from Chad Green and Trevor Richards, nobody has performed up to expectations for the Toronto Blue Jays, and that can be said for a lot of the offensive players as well, and that's why we're sitting here 16 and a half games out of the division race, or 14 and a half games out of the division race, with the offense being arguably the worst in baseball, and Vlad being really the only bright light this season, aside from a couple of the Buffalo Boys and Spencer Horwitz and Addison Barger to a degree. But very, very upsetting, very surprising. I'm not saying upsetting in the sense of Tim Mayza's gone, that's super upsetting. Just the way this season has gone has just been absolutely crazy for me. And you look at some of this now, so you can see Atkins tries to keep the Blue Jays options open as big decisions loom. And again, I just want to touch on these comments because it really goes to show the pressure that they're facing going forward. So obviously, we covered most of these comments in a video yesterday and over the past couple days, but I just wanted to kind of put it in perspective here. He basically acknowledged to fans that the team put itself in a tough spot, but refused to wave a white flag in the season just yet, insisting we're going to try to correct it. And he also signaled that the best possible team we can, they're going to try to build, and that going forward. And the 29 other teams ahead of them at the July 30th trade deadline, there was an important signal of the club's intentions. For now, we're not selling, but be ready in case we do. And that's kind of the big thing. Will the Toronto Blue Jays sell? Maybe. They probably will. It's going to be very interesting to see if they end up actually selling, because if they sell, Ross Atkins' job is probably on the line here. And just like Caitlin McGrath said here, Caitlin McGrath said that it's a move that really shows how terrible of a season this has been. It's a move emblematic of a season gone terribly wrong. And then Mayza was obviously, like I mentioned, one of the best relievers in baseball last year, and this year he was DFA'd before the All-Star break. No room for error, and they're making tough decisions every week, and that's the point I'm trying to make. I don't think that the Blue Jays would have done this last year. I don't think the Jays would have done this the year before. They're facing a time now from ownership, from the fans, from everybody involved, that if they do not fix things soon and start winning, whether fans stop showing up, whether the management gets fired, whatever it is, they are making desperation moves because of how bad the season has gone. And I completely agree with what Caitlin said here. It's literally a move emblematic of a season that has been absolutely god-awful. It has been a terrible season for the Blue Jays. Things need to happen. It's been the season from hell. That's what everybody calls it. And from now on, the Jays are doing things in order to get wins, whether they're fancy or not. And hopefully this translates to some wins. But let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Hopefully the Jays can take care of business against the Yankees today. See you soon.